My name is Mara Bennett. I am 34 years old, a lieutenant commander in the United States Coast Guard, and on the morning I was supposed to begin the happiest chapter of my life, my mother walked into a chapel where she had not been invited and struck me across the face in front of 163 people. The sound was sharper than I expected. Not loud exactly, just clean, final. My head turned. The inside of my cheek caught against a tooth, and I tasted blood before I understood what had happened. A red drop landed on the pearl-colored fabric covering my shoulder. For several seconds, no one moved. My mother stood in front of me wearing a navy raincoat despite the warm September weather. Her chest rose and fell as if she had run all the way from the gate. Her right hand remained suspended between us. "You stood here," she whispered, "in their chapel, after what they did to him." Then my husband stepped between us. Noah Hale was a Coast Guard helicopter pilot who had flown rescue missions through winds strong enough to peel roofs from houses. I had watched him remain calm while alarms screamed and fuel calculations turned ugly. He did not raise his voice now. He placed one arm behind him, shielding me without touching me, and looked directly at my mother. "Ma'am," he said, "step away from her." Two members of base security were already moving down the center aisle. My mother did not resist when they took her by the arms. She did not shout. She did not look proud of what she had done. She looked terrified. That was the detail I could not forget. Not the sting in my face, not the blood on my dress, not the guests staring at us from rows of polished wooden pews. Her fear. It was the expression of a woman who had followed a map to a destination and suddenly realized someone else had drawn the map. The slap looked like the beginning of the disaster. It was not. It was the final move in a plan my younger sister had been carrying out for nearly 7 years. Because my mother lived 4 hours away, had stopped driving on interstate highways, did not know how to request access to a federal installation, and could not have passed through the security gate without a registered sponsor. Someone had brought her there. Someone had signed her in. And someone had spent the entire drive telling her exactly what she needed to believe before she placed her hand against my face. To understand why my mother was standing in that chapel, you have to understand the family I came from and the story I had believed about it. I grew up in a weather-beaten house on Alder Street in a coastal town called Bellwether, Maine. The town had one grocery store, 2 churches, a marina, and the kind of memory that outlived the people who created it. My father, Thomas Bennett, repaired marine engines. He smelled permanently of salt, gasoline, and peppermint gum. He could listen to a motor for 10 seconds and tell you which part was failing. When I was a child, I believed he could fix anything. Then, when I was 16, he died from an aneurysm while carrying a box of tools into his workshop. One moment, he was telling me to stop leaving my bicycle in the driveway. The next, he was gone. After that, our house became a place organized around absence. There was my mother, Evelyn. There was me. And there was my sister, Celeste, who was 4 years younger. My mother worked in the billing office of a local medical clinic. She was exact, disciplined, and emotionally private. She kept every receipt in labeled envelopes. She ironed pillowcases. She believed grief was something respectable people endured behind closed doors. Celeste was different. She was charming in the way some people are musical. It required no visible effort. She could make strangers tell her their secrets in grocery store lines. Teachers excused her missed assignments because she always had a convincing reason. When she broke rules, she did it with tears already prepared. People called her sensitive. I called her gifted. I did not understand then that charm can become a weapon when the person using it believes affection is a resource to control. The deepest wound in our family had opened years before my father died. My mother's older brother, Owen Mercer, served as an aviation maintenance technician in the Coast Guard. When I was 9, his helicopter went down during a night rescue off the coast of North Carolina. The crew had been searching for 2 fishermen caught in a violent storm. The aircraft disappeared from radar less than 20 minutes after locating the boat. Uncle Owen's body was never recovered. A folded flag arrived. Officers came to our house. Words like sacrifice, service, and duty were spoken in our living room while my mother stared at the floor. Afterward, she refused to speak about the Coast Guard without bitterness. She did not blame the storm. She blamed the institution that had put her brother in TH. Ye Sky. She blamed commanders whose names she did not know, maintenance decisions she did not understand, and every uniform that reminded her of the men who came to tell her Owen was gone. Years later, when I announced that I had accepted an appointment to the Coast Guard Academy, my mother stood at the kitchen counter with both hands gripping the edge. "No," she said. I thought she had misunderstood. I already accepted. She turned around slowly. I buried one person because of that service. I will not sit here and watch it take another. It isn't taking me. You don't know that. I know what I want. Her expression changed then. Fear hardened into anger because anger was easier for her to hold. If you walk out of this house for that uniform, don't expect me to celebrate it. I walked out anyway. I was 17 and certain that choosing my future required rejecting her fear. She did not attend my academy graduation. She did not attend my first promotion. When I became an officer, the mother of one of my classmates adjusted my collar because mine was not there. For years, I allowed that single argument in our kitchen to explain everything that followed. My mother hated the service. I chose the service. Therefore, she had chosen to hate me. It was painful, but it was simple. Simple stories are dangerous because they discourage investigation. The truth was that my mother and I did not stop communicating in one dramatic moment. We were separated by 1,000 small interruptions, almost all of them delivered by Celeste. At first, I called home regularly. Celeste often answered. Mom was working. Mom was tired. Mom had a migraine. Mom had seen a photograph of me in uniform and spent the evening crying. Mom was not ready to talk. Give her time, Celeste would say. I'm trying to protect both of you. When I sent birthday cards, Celeste told me they had upset our mother. When I mailed photographs, she said Mom put them in a drawer without looking. When I asked to visit during leave, Celeste warned that an unexpected appearance might trigger another breakdown. She never told me to disappear completely. That would have been too obvious. She simply reduced every opening until contact became a narrow passage only she controlled. Twice a year, she gave me something hopeful. Mom asked whether you were eating properly. Mom kept the scarf you sent. Mom watched a Coast Guard rescue on television and did not leave the room. Those fragments kept me obedient. I lived on them. Celeste remained in Bellwether. She married young, had a son named Jonah, divorced before she turned 27, and moved back into the Alder Street house. By then, I had built a life hundreds of miles away. Every report I received about my mother came from Celeste. Every report my mother received about me came from the same person. I never saw the risk because Celeste spoke the language of concern. She was not blocking communication, she said. She was managing emotions. She was not keeping us apart. She was waiting for the right time. She was not controlling our mother. She was caring for her. In 2018, the clinic reduced my mother's hours. Celeste called me one evening and said the mortgage was paid off, but utilities, medication, insurance, and repairs were becoming difficult. I offered to send money directly. No, she said immediately. Mom would never accept it from you. Then don't tell her it's from me. She'll notice. Set up an account for household expenses. Let her think you're managing it. There was a pause long enough to feel thoughtful. That might work. Celeste opened an account called Evelyn Bennett Home Support. I began sending $650 on the first day of every month. The transfers continued for 7 years. $650, month after month. I never missed one. When hurricane damage destroyed part of the roof, I sent an additional $3,000. When my mother needed cataract surgery, I sent $2,000 more. When Celeste said the heating system was failing, I covered half the replacement cost. Or at least, that is what I believed I was doing. I also kept writing. Not emotional letters. My mother did not trust emotional language. I wrote about practical things. A new assignment. A promotion. A rescue Noah's crew had completed. A recipe my father used to make. Sometimes I wrote only 3 sentences, because 3 honest sentences seemed better than silence. No reply ever came. No handwriting. No phone call. No acknowledgement. Celeste always had an explanation. She read it. She isn't ready. She put it away. She cried afterward. I believed my mother was receiving everything and rejecting me quietly. My mother believed she was receiving nothing at all. That was the architecture of Celeste's plan. 2 women experiencing abandonment at the same time, each blaming the other, while the only person standing between them, collected sympathy from both sides. I met Noah at an air station in Massachusetts. His rescue detachment had requested emergency supplies after a winter storm, and the inventory report his team submitted did not match the actual equipment on the aircraft. I called him at 6 in the morning. He arrived carrying coffee and an apology. Most pilots I knew would have blamed the crew chief, the software, the weather, or the person who entered the numbers. Noah looked at the discrepancy admitted his unit had made the mistake, and stayed until we corrected it. I trusted him because he did not need to appear flawless. We became friends first. Then we became the kind of people who kept finding reasons to remain in the same room. Our relationship was quiet. No games, no tests, no punishment disguised as silence. The first time he met Celeste over video call, she was warm, funny, and interested in every detail of his work. Afterward, he said, "She seems very protective of your mother." I remember answering, "She has to be, I'm not there." That sentence would later return to me with a different meaning. Noah proposed beside our kitchen sink while we were washing dishes. There was no photographer hiding nearby, no restaurant full of strangers. He held out a ring with soap still on one hand and said, "I want this to be the place I come home to for the rest of my life." We decided to marry at the small chapel near the Coast Guard Academy in New London. It was part of the world where we had met, worked, and built our adult lives. When we began planning the guest list, Noah asked about my mother once. Only once. "Do you want her there?" I looked down at the list. "I want the mother I remember there." "That isn't what I asked." "I know." He waited. I thought about the unanswered letters, the rejected photographs, the warnings from Celeste, and the argument in our kitchen 17 years earlier. "No," I said, "I don't think she should come." He did not try to convince me otherwise. Still, 3 months before the wedding, I mailed one final letter. I wrote that I was getting married in September. I included the city but not the chapel, the base, or the schedule. I told her I was not asking for anything. I only wanted her to hear the news from me. At the bottom, I added, "I hope one day we can speak without anyone standing between us." I did not know how literal that sentence was. Celeste called 11 days later. "I need to tell you something, and I hate being in the middle." My stomach tightened. "What happened?" "Mom got your letter." "And?" "She tore it in half." Celeste lowered her voice. "She said you were choosing the Coast Guard all over again. First over Uncle Owen, then over her, and now you're building your marriage around it." I closed my eyes. Did she say anything else? "She said she has no daughter in that uniform." It sounded like something my mother might say, because it was built from words she had said once, years earlier. That is how convincing lies are made. Not from invention, but from carefully preserved truth. On the morning of the wedding, the sky was pale blue and nearly cloudless. My closest friend, Tessa Ward, helped fasten the buttons on the back of my dress while giving instructions to everyone within hearing distance. Tessa and I had survived the academy together. She knew how to make a crisis feel like a scheduling inconvenience. A civilian coordinator entered with a clipboard. The groom's guests are checked in. The bride's additional family visitors have cleared security. I stopped adjusting my earring. My what? Well, she checked the page. 2 family visitors, Bennett party. I didn't register any family visitors. The coordinator frowned and scanned the list. The request was approved 3 days ago. Sponsor initials CB. My pulse changed. Can you show me? Before she could answer, the organ music began. Tessa stepped closer. We can stop this. I should have. I have replayed that moment many times. I could have ordered the chapel doors closed. I could have contacted security. I could have demanded the complete visitor record. But weddings create their own momentum. Guests were standing. Noah was waiting. The coordinator suggested it might be an administrative error. I told myself CB could belong to one of Noah's relatives. I told myself I was reacting to old fear. I walked toward the chapel. The ceremony had begun when the rear doors opened. My mother came down the aisle quickly, almost stumbling. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her gray hair had grown longer. Her face seemed thinner, her mouth tight with an emotion I could not read. For one foolish second, hope rose inside me. She came. Then I saw Celeste behind her. My sister remained in the vestibule, partially hidden by the doorway. Her hand was on our mother's back. She leaned forward and whispered something into her ear. My mother. This expression hardened. Celeste stepped away. My mother continued alone. The chaplain stopped speaking. Noah turned toward the aisle. I said, "Mom." She reached the front row. "You made this place your altar," she said. "The same service that killed Owen. That is what this is." Celeste told me about the tribute. What tribute? The toast, the memorial flight, celebrating the people who sent him into that storm. There was no memorial flight. There was no toast to the Coast Guard. We had planned one short speech about our fathers after the ceremony. Nothing more. I looked past my mother. Celeste was no longer in the doorway. "Mom, someone lied to you." Her face twisted. "Don't blame your sister. She is the only one who stayed." Then she struck me. By the time security reached us, Celeste had disappeared from the building. My mother was taken to an office near the gate. Because the assault occurred on federal property, it was not treated as a private family disagreement. Statements were taken. Photographs were made of my injury. My mother received a citation and an order barring her from the installation until the case was resolved. I sat in a side room with ice wrapped in a towel against my cheek. My dress was marked with 2 small spots of blood. Noah knelt in front of me. "We can stop," he said. I understood what he meant. Stop the ceremony. Send everyone home. Deal with the wreckage. I looked at him and realized something important. My mother had already lost control of her own life. I would not surrender control of mine. "She does not get to decide what this day becomes," I said. Noah pressed his forehead to mine. "Then we finish it." 27 minutes later, we returned to the chapel. People tried not to stare at my swollen face. The chaplain's voice shook during the first sentence and steadied during the second. Noah took my hands. We completed our vows. When he kissed me, the cut inside my cheek hurt. I kissed him anyway. At the reception, Tessa handed me a folded page from the security office. "This came from the visitor file," she said. Under the section marked sponsor, the name was printed clearly. Celeste Bennett. My sister had submitted identification for herself and our mother. She had requested both passes. Security footage later showed her driving through the gate, parking near the chapel, and escorting our mother to the entrance. She had not entered the ceremony. She had delivered the explosion and stepped out of range. That night, Noah and I sat in our hotel room with 2 laptops open on the bed and untouched food cooling on a table. "This can wait," he told me. No, anger can wait, facts cannot. We built a timeline. Celeste requested access on Wednesday. She collected my mother before dawn on Saturday. She drove more than 4 hours. She brought her to the chapel minutes before the vows. She invented a military tribute involving Uncle Owen. She disappeared immediately after the assault. The question was no longer whether she had arranged it. The question was why. The next morning, I called Noah's aunt, who had been seated near the back. She remembered seeing Celeste in the vestibule with our mother. She was talking very close to Evelyn's ear, she said. I assumed she was calming her. "What did you hear?" There was a pause. She said, "They're going to honor the people who sent Owen up that night." Then she said, "If you stay quiet now, Mara will erase him forever." I wrote the words down. My sister had not merely brought our mother to the wedding. She had spent 4 hours converting grief into a weapon. I called Celeste that afternoon. She answered while crying. "Mara, I am so sorry. I thought seeing you would heal something. I had no idea she would attack you. You requested the passes." "Because she begged me." "You told her. We planned a tribute to the Coast Guard." I told her what I understood from the program. "You never saw the program." Silence. Then she changed direction. "You're focusing on the wrong thing. Mom is facing federal charges. She is humiliated. She has barely eaten." "Where is she?" "At home." "Put her on the phone." "No." The answer came too quickly. "Why not?" "Because hearing your voice would make her unstable. I want to speak to her directly." "Mara, please, trust me. I know what she can handle." There it was again. The same gate. The same guard. The same instruction. Trust me and stay away. Celeste continued speaking, her voice softening into concern. "You need to tell the court you don't want charges. I will take care of Mom. You focus on your marriage." For the first time, I heard the control beneath the tenderness. I said, "All right, take care of her." She exhaled. "Thank you, that's the mature choice." When the call ended, I wrote down every belief I held about my mother and identified its source. Mom destroyed my graduation photograph. Source: Celeste. Mom refused my financial help. Source: Celeste. Mom hated the scarf I sent. Source: Celeste. Mom said I cared more about strangers than family. Source: Celeste. Mom tore up my wedding letter. Source: Celeste. Mom never wanted to see me again. Source: Celeste. I filled 2 pages. Not one fact had come directly from my mother. I had spent 7 years treating a single narrator as an entire archive. In my profession, a supply chain with one unverified point of control is considered vulnerable. Every request, shipment, and report can be altered at the same location. I had understood that principle everywhere, except inside my own family. Verification began with a woman named Ruth Keene. Ruth lived next door to my mother and had known us since childhood. She had taught Celeste and me to make blueberry jam and had attended my father's funeral. I called her without warning. At first, we spoke about ordinary things: her garden, the marina, Jonah's school. Then I asked whether my mother was doing well financially. Ruth became quiet. Why are you asking? I have been sending money for years. What money? My hand tightened around the phone. $650 every month. Ruth inhaled slowly. Mara, your mother thinks you have not sent her anything since you left. That is not possible. She told the women at church that you stopped writing years ago. She thinks you forgot her. The room seemed to tilt. I sat down. Is the house all right? No. Last winter, Evelyn kept 3 rooms closed because she could not afford heating oil. Celeste told everyone she was covering the bills herself. I opened my banking application while Ruth continued speaking. 7 years of transfers appeared in neat, identical lines. $650 each month. 84 regular payments. Additional emergency transfers. The total was more than $62,000. My mother had been limiting heat, while money intended for her arrived every month. Ruth, has my mother ever mentioned an account called Evelyn Bennett Home Support? No. Has Celeste? No. Before our conversation ended, Ruth said something else. Your mother keeps a photograph of you in the kitchen. What photograph? The one from your first command assignment. She told me she found it online. I could not speak for several seconds. Celeste had told me my mother refused to look at any image of me in uniform. My mother had found one herself and kept it where she ate breakfast. 30 minutes after I ended the call, Celeste sent a message. Please stop upsetting Ruth with private family matters. She gets confused. I had not told Celeste I planned to contact her. Bellwether was a small town. Ruth could have mentioned the call to someone. The explanation was probably ordinary. The instinct behind Celeste's message was not. She had learned that I contacted an outside witness and immediately tried to discredit her. I stopped calling neighbors. I started collecting records. My bank confirmed every transfer had cleared. The receiving account was active at a local branch in Bellwether. The bank could not reveal transaction details without legal authority, but a representative confirmed the account information did not match the assumptions under which I had been sending money. What does that mean? I asked. It means you should speak to the branch where the account was opened and bring documentation showing you originated the transfers. Noah looked at me from across the kitchen table. When do we leave? We drove to Bellwether 2 days later. The town appeared exactly as it had in my memory. Fishing boats rested in the harbor. The grocery store sign had faded. My father's old workshop had become a hardware shop. We parked 3 streets from Alder Street because Celeste recognized Noah's vehicle. Our first stop was Ruth's house. She hugged me for a long time and touched my cheek where the swelling had begun to fade. I should have called you, she said. You believed what you were told. So did you. Before we left, she remembered something. Your mother gave me a box several years ago. She said she could not keep it in the house but could not throw it away. What kind of box? Owen's things. She disappeared upstairs and returned carrying a taped cardboard container with my mother's handwriting on the side. OWN. The letters were faded. Ruth placed it in my arms. She never asked for it back. Noah and I opened the box inside our car. On top was the triangular flag presented to my grandmother after Uncle Owen's memorial. Beneath it lay his ribbons, photographs, a damaged wristwatch, and several maintenance patches. At the bottom was a sealed envelope addressed to my mother. The postmark was dated 12 days before Owen's helicopter disappeared. My mother had never opened it. I understood why. Reading his last letter would have made his death immense. Die it again. So she placed it inside a box and eventually moved the box out of the house. I opened the envelope carefully. Owen wrote about bad coffee, freezing rain, and a mechanic who sang country songs off-key. He asked about my father's workshop. He told my mother to stop worrying. Near the end, he mentioned me. Mara asks better questions than half the officers I work with. If she ever chooses this life, do not let my risks become her cage. I would rather see her serve with open eyes than live safely inside someone else's fear. Tell her I would be proud. I read the paragraph twice, then a third time. My mother had spent years believing the Coast Guard had taken her brother and was now taking her daughter. Her brother had asked her not to turn his death into my prison. His words had remained sealed inside a box she could not face. I covered my mouth and cried. Noah did not tell me to stop. After several minutes, he reached deeper into the box. Mara. Beneath the photographs was a canvas pouch secured with string. Inside were envelopes. Dozens of them. My handwriting. Birthday cards. Christmas notes. Promotion announcements. Photographs. The letter I had sent before the wedding. Every envelope remained sealed. I spread them across my lap and recognized years of my life. The blue card I sent after a rescue in Boston Harbor. The photograph of Noah and me beside our first apartment. The letter explaining that I had been promoted. The note I wrote after dreaming about my father. Someone had removed them from my mother's mailbox before she saw them. Someone had hidden them inside the only container my mother would never willingly open. The cruelty was not impulsive. It was procedural. Month after month, year after year, Celeste had watched for my handwriting, intercepted it, and preserved the evidence of my efforts while telling each of us the other had chosen silence. My mother was not rejecting my letters. She had never received them. I was not an absent daughter. I had been edited out of her life. Noah gathered the envelopes carefully. We need legal advice before we do anything else. I nodded. For the first time, anger was not the strongest feeling inside me. It was clarity. Back in New London, I met with a legal assistance attorney and described the assault, visitor records, intercepted mail, and monthly transfers. She divided the problem into separate categories. My mother's federal citation was one matter. Possible financial exploitation was another. Mail interference could create additional issues. Any power of attorney or property transfer involving my mother needed immediate review. "Do not confront your sister yet," she said. "People who control information often react when they realize the information is escaping." The hearing for my mother's assault citation was scheduled 3 weeks after the wedding. That deadline changed everything. If I did nothing, the case would be simple. My mother had struck me in front of witnesses on federal property. The court could impose a fine, probation, and a lasting record. She was responsible for her hand. But she had been manipulated into that chapel by the person controlling her home, her mail, her finances, and her understanding of me. I did not want revenge against my mother. I wanted the truth placed between us before a court converted Celeste's fiction into a permanent legal fact. The following Sunday, Celeste called. She gave me an update on Mom's sleep, appetite, and blood pressure. Every sentence reinforced her role as the only authorized source. Then her tone became casual. "Are you planning to continue the monthly support?" I said nothing for a moment. Celeste had never previously acknowledged the payments directly. She always described the account as something my mother should not know about. "Why?" I asked. "I need to plan household expenses." So I thought Mom did not know about the money. "She doesn't. I mean, she knows there is help. She just does not know it comes from you." "Does she depend on it?" "Yes," Celeste answered immediately. "Completely." That was the first time she confirmed the money existed. Not because guilt had weakened her. Because she feared the flow might stop. I told her I had not decided. She began speaking faster. "Myra, whatever happened at the wedding, you cannot punish Mom by cutting off what keeps the house running." The house was not running. My mother was rationing heat. I wrote down the time and exact wording of the conversation. 2 days later, I drove to Bellwether alone. I met with the manager of the bank branch where Celeste had created the account. I brought transfer records, copies of the messages describing its purpose, and identification. The manager could not provide a full account history, but after reviewing the documents, he confirmed the ownership structure. The account titled Evelyn Bennett Home Support did not belong to Ellen Bennett. Celeste was the sole owner. My mother had never been listed as a signer, beneficiary, or authorized user. Her name existed only in the title. It created the appearance of care without granting her access to a single dollar. I sat in my car afterward, with both hands resting on the steering wheel. More than $62,000 had left my account. My mother had received none of it. Celeste believed I still knew only what she had told me. For the first time in 7 years, information had crossed the border without her permission. My phone vibrated. "Celeste, I saw your car near the bank. What are you doing here?" I waited before answering. "Visiting Dad's grave and handling some paperwork." Her reply arrived quickly. "Please do not come to the house. Mom is emotionally unstable. Seeing you could cause another incident." I was less than 2 miles away from my mother. Celeste still believed she could forbid us from occupying the same room. I wrote back that I understood. Then I went to the cemetery. My father's headstone was wet from morning rain. I told him the entire story aloud. It felt ridiculous until it did not. My father had spent his life diagnosing machines by listening for what was missing. I wondered whether he would have noticed the silence in our family before I did. On the way out of the cemetery, I passed the county courthouse. The attorney's warning returned to me. Any power of attorney or property transfer. I turned the car around. Property documents were public. The first record I found was a durable power of attorney signed by my mother 18 months earlier. It granted Celeste broad control over banking, property, insurance, and medical decisions. The signature date matched the week after my mother's second cataract surgery. Celeste had told me Mom was temporarily unable to read small print and needed help completing forms. The second record was worse. 8 months after obtaining power of attorney, Celeste used it to secure a $48,000 loan against the Alder Street house. My father had paid that house off before his death. For more than a decade, my mother had owned it free and clear. Now it carried debt she likely did not know existed. The third record was a notice of default. 4 missed payments. The lender had begun the process that could lead to foreclosure. I read the documents at a wooden table beneath fluorescent lights, while people around me requested marriage certificates and building permits. My mother believed Celeste was sacrificing her own life to protect the family home. In reality, Celeste had taken my money, borrowed against the house, missed the payments, and was approaching the moment when everything would become visible. That explained the wedding. The foreclosure notice created a deadline for Celeste. Soon, my mother would see official mail or a notice attached to the property. Questions would follow. The bank account, the loan, the intercepted letters, and the power of attorney could all be exposed if my mother spoke to me directly. Celeste needed to make reconciliation impossible before that happened. A public assault was perfect. If my mother attacked me at my wedding, I would hate her. If she faced federal consequences, she would become more dependent on Celeste. If the family conflict appeared severe enough, Celeste could portray our mother as unstable and justify taking even greater control of her affairs. The slap was not the crime Celeste was hiding. It was the wall she intended to build around every other crime. The next week, Noah and I assembled a file. Transfer confirmations. Messages describing the purpose of the account. Bank ownership verification. The visitor sponsorship request. Security records. The power of attorney. The home equity loan. The default notice. Photographs of the unopened letters. A copy of Owen's final message. We made 3 complete sets. I contacted the victim witness coordinator assigned to my mother's case and said I wanted to address the court. Celeste continued calling. Each time, she encouraged me not to attend the hearing. I will explain everything to the judge, she said. You are not her lawyer. I am her caregiver. Mom has a public defender. She does not trust strangers. She trusts me. That was the problem. The night before the hearing, Celeste called again. We are driving down early. I think you should stay home. If Mom sees you in uniform, she may lose control. I looked at my service dress uniform, hanging on the bedroom door. I understand, I said. After the call, Noah asked, "Are you wearing it tomorrow?" Yes. For the judge. No, for my mother. I wanted her to see the person Celeste had spent 7 years describing without evidence. Not a reckless child playing hero. Not an ungrateful daughter hiding inside an institution. It was me. At 6 the next morning, Noah and I drove to the federal court. House. My mother and Celeste entered the marble hallway shortly before 9. Celeste held our mother's elbow. At first glance, the gesture appeared supportive. Then I noticed how Celeste positioned her body between Mom and everyone else. She guided rather than steadied. She leaned close whenever someone approached. She answered questions before our mother could speak. My mother saw me across the hall. Her eyes moved over my uniform, my ribbons, and the folder in my hands. For half a second, she looked uncertain. Celeste whispered into her ear. Mom looked away. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. My mother sat beside an appointed attorney. Celeste chose the bench directly behind her. When the case was called, the government summarized the incident in plain language. My mother had entered the chapel. She had confronted me. She had struck me. The judge asked whether I was present. I stood. My mother turned. It was the first time she had seen me in uniform since I left home at 17. Not in a photograph selected by Celeste. Not through someone else's description. In person. Your Honor, I said, I am the victim in this matter, and I am also Evelyn Bennett's daughter. The judge invited me to speak. I carried the folder to the lectern. My mother assaulted me. I am not denying that, and I am not asking the court to pretend it did not happen. I am asking the court to consider why a woman with no criminal history traveled 4 hours to a secured installation and attacked her daughter during a wedding ceremony. Behind my mother, Celeste shifted. I continued. The person who transported her to the chapel told her we planned to celebrate the institution she blamed for her brother's death. That statement was false. The same person sponsored her access, controlled her communication, intercepted her mail, received money intended for her support, and used authority over her affairs to borrow against her home. Celeste stood. Your Honor, this is a private family dispute. The judge looked at her. Sit down. I am Evelyn's caregiver. You are not counsel. Sit down. Celeste obeyed, but her face had changed. I opened the first section of the file. For 84 months, I transferred $650 to an account represented to me as support for my mother. With additional payments, the total exceeded $62,000. I handed copies to the clerk. The receiving account is titled Evelyn Bennett Home Support. My mother has never been an owner or authorized user. The sole owner is Celeste Bennett. My mother turned toward me. What money? She asked. Her attorney placed a hand lightly on her arm. I looked directly at her. I sent money every month, Mom. No. Every month. No, Mara, nothing came. Her voice broke. You left. You never wrote. You never called. there was nothing. I felt the old pain rise, but now it had evidence around it. I wrote to you. You did not. I lifted the photographs of the unopened envelopes. These were found in Uncle Owen's box at Ruth Keene's house. Every letter I sent you is still sealed. The courtroom became silent. My mother stared at the images. I placed the actual wedding letter on the lectern. This is the letter Celeste said you tore in half. Mom looked over her shoulder. Celeste's face had gone pale. I continued before emotion could take control of the room. The power of attorney in the next section was signed while my mother was recovering from eye surgery. It was later used to obtain a $48,000 loan against her home. The loan is in default. My mother's attorney took the documents and read quickly. My mother whispered, "What loan?" Celeste stood again. "Mom, do not listen to her." The judge's voice hardened. "Ms. Bennett, sit down immediately." Celeste remained standing. "You do not understand what I had to do," she said. No one answered. She looked at me. "You left me there with everything. Mom, the house, Jonah, the bills. You went away and built a career while I handled real life. I sent money. You sent enough to feel generous. It was for Mom. I used it for the family. You told her it never existed. She did not need to know every detail." My mother rose slowly. The judge did not stop her. "What did you do to my house?" she asked. Celeste's expression changed from fear to anger. "I saved your house. You borrowed against it. I paid bills. With Mara's money. With money that came into my account. Why were her letters in Owen's box?" Celeste looked around the courtroom, as if searching for the correct audience. "She abandoned us." "That was not my question," Mom said. It was the strongest I had heard her voice in years. Celeste began crying. "I was alone. Nobody cared what I was carrying. Mara got medals and ceremonies. You mourned Owen. Dad was dead. I was the one left in that house listening to you calm. Plain about money and waiting for everyone to notice me." My mother stared at her. "So you made me hate my daughter." "I protected you." "You stole her from me." "No, she left." "You made sure she could not come back." The judge called for order. Celeste continued speaking over her. "I deserved some of that money. I gave up my life. The house would be mine eventually anyway." The words settled over the room. Her entitlement had done what our evidence had not yet done. It had confessed. The judge directed the courtroom officer to escort Celeste into the hallway while the hearing continued. She was not arrested there, but the record preserved what she had admitted. Copies of the financial documents were referred to the appropriate authorities for review. My mother sat down slowly. She looked exhausted. The judge turned to me. "What outcome are you requesting regarding the assault?" This was the moment when revenge would have been easiest. I remembered the blood on my wedding dress. I remembered my mother's hand. I also remembered her unopened letters and the coat she wore indoors because she believed there was no money for heat. "I am asking for a deferred resolution," I said. "Counseling compliance with the debarment order, and dismissal after a period without further incidents. I want accountability without a permanent conviction. My mother looked at me as if she did not understand. The judge studied both of us. You are requesting leniency for the person who assaulted you. I am requesting that the court distinguish between responsibility and exploitation. She is responsible for striking me. She was also deliberately manipulated. The judge accepted a conditional resolution. My mother would complete counseling, obey the installation ban, and have no further legal violations. If she complied, the matter would close without a lasting conviction. The assault would not disappear. But Celeste would not be allowed to use it as proof that our mother required her control. When the hearing ended, my mother's attorney helped her revoke the power of attorney immediately. She signed the document at a table in the courthouse hallway. Her hand shook so badly that the first signature was barely legible. She signed again. Celeste stood 20 feet away, with Noah between her and us. She was speaking urgently into her phone, calling someone about Jonah, the bank, the house, and the car. Her world was beginning to demand explanations. I opened Owen's letter. Mom. She looked at me. This was in the box. Her face changed when she recognized the handwriting. I cannot. You can read it now or later, but it belongs to you. She took the envelope. It was sealed. Yes. For all these years. Yes. She unfolded the pages slowly. I watched her read. When she reached the paragraph about me, her knees weakened. I caught her by the arms. For a moment, she resisted. Then she leaned against me. He told me not to make his death your cage, she whispered. Yes. I did exactly that. You were grieving. That does not excuse what I said. No. I struck you. Yes. She pulled back and looked at the fading bruise on my face. I believed you were honoring the people who killed him. No one killed him, Mom. He died trying to rescue people in a storm. I know that here. She touched her temple. I never knew it here. Her hand moved to her chest. Then she said the sentence that broke something open between us. I thought you stopped loving me first. I answered honestly. So did I. Reconciliation did not happen in that hallway. There was no embrace that erased 7 years. No speech restored every birthday, promotion, illness, or holiday we had missed. The truth gave us a door. We still had to decide whether to walk through it. My mother did not return to Alder Street with Celeste. Ruth gave her a room for several nights. Noah and I helped arrange temporary access to her accounts, legal representation, and protection for the house, while the financial investigation continued. The bank froze the support account. The lender paused foreclosure proceedings after receiving documentation that the loan may have been obtained through misuse of authority. Investigators began tracing the transfers. Celeste had used the money to cover credit cards, a failed event planning business, private school tuition deposits she later lost, car payments, vacations she described online as work retreats, and ordinary household expenses she had publicly claimed to pay from her own income. very little remained. Some people expected me to celebrate when the investigation focused on her. I did not. Celeste was my sister. I remembered teaching her to ride a bicycle. I remembered sleeping beside her after our father died because she was afraid to be alone. I remembered the way she made my mother laugh before control became more important than love. Understanding those me. Maury's did not make her safe. I chose no contact. Not as punishment, as containment. Through attorneys, we arranged that Jonah could continue seeing our mother without being used to pass messages. I refused to let a child become the next courier in our family's war. Celeste sent dozens of messages. Some were furious, some apologetic. Some accused me of destroying the family. Some claimed she had always intended to repay the money. One message said, "You got what you wanted. Mom chose you." That sentence revealed how she understood love. A limited object. A possession. Something one daughter could win only if the other lost. I did not respond. My mother began counseling with a therapist experienced in traumatic loss and coercive family relationships. At first, she treated each session like a punishment assigned by the court. Then she began talking about Owen. Not the memorial. Not the uniform. Owen himself. His terrible singing. His habit of borrowing tools and returning them rusty. This summer, he taught us to swim beyond the shallow part of the cove. Grief had frozen him at the moment of his death. Therapy allowed him to become a person again instead of a symbol Celeste could activate whenever she needed control. My mother and I spoke by telephone every Wednesday evening. The first calls were painfully formal. "How is work?" "Fine." "How is Noah?" "Fine." "How is counseling?" "Fine." We were two women standing at opposite ends of a bridge, checking whether it could bear weight. On the fourth call, she asked what I actually did in the Coast Guard. I explained logistics planning, emergency response, port coordination, fuel, medical supplies, shelter equipment, and the 1,000 invisible decisions behind every successful rescue. "So you are not on helicopters?" she asked. "Not unless something has gone very wrong." She laughed unexpectedly. It was the first time I had heard that sound directed toward me in years. Later, she asked about my wedding. Not the assault. The ceremony. "What did your husband say in his vows?" I told her. "What did you say?" I told her that too. She began crying quietly. I missed it while standing in the room. "Yes. I am sorry." It was not enough. It was also real. "I know," I said. Months passed. The court closed her assault case after she completed the required counseling and remained compliant. The installation ban stayed in place, which she accepted without complaint. The house was saved through a combination of fraud review, repayment arrangements, and the sale of assets Celeste had purchased with diverted funds. Not all my money was recovered. I had to decide whether I needed every dollar returned in order to move forward. I did not. I needed the theft named. I needed my mother protected. I needed Celeste's access to our lives removed. Money can be replaced more easily than years. The unopened letters could not return the time they represented, but my mother read each one. She called after opening the card from my promotion. I would have come, she said. I closed my eyes. I know. No, you do not understand. If I had seen this, if I had known the date, I would have come even if I had to stand outside. I believe you. She opened the letters chronologically. Some evenings, she called to ask about details I had forgotten. Who was the family in the rescue photograph? Why had Noah been wearing a cast? What happened to the apartment with the leaking ceiling? Each question returned a small piece of my life to her. In return, she told me about the years I had missed. Her surgery. Jonah's birth. The winter the kitchen pipes froze. The day she found my command photograph online and secretly printed it at the library because Celeste said the printer at home was broken. I asked why she never called me herself. She was silent for a long time. Celeste said you had blocked the house number. I never blocked it. She showed me calls that failed. She may have used a setting on your phone. I should have tried another number. Yes. You should have come to the door. Yes. Neither of us allowed manipulation to erase our own failures. Celeste had controlled the information, but we had accepted too many convenient explanations. I had been afraid of direct rejection. My mother had been afraid of confirming that I no longer needed her. We had both allowed pride to disguise fear. That truth was uncomfortable. It was also necessary. 6 months after the wedding, Noah and I held a small gathering in Ruth's garden overlooking the harbor. It was not a second wedding. We did not repeat our vows for an audience. We simply invited 12 people who had helped us survive the first ceremony and gave the day a different ending. My mother attended. She wore a soft green dress and the small silver earrings Uncle Owen had given her when she turned 21. I wore my wedding dress again. The blow. Odd marks had faded but not disappeared completely. Under certain light, 2 faint shadows remained near the shoulder. My mother noticed them. Her fingers hovered above the fabric without touching it. I did that. Yes. I wish I could remove it. I don't. She looked at me. The stain is not the whole dress, I said. Her face tightened. No, it is. During lunch, Noah gave her a framed copy of Owen's letter. The original remained protected in archival glass at her house. My mother read the final paragraph again. Then she looked at my uniform photograph on the table beside it. He would have been impossible at your promotions, she said. He would have shouted louder than everyone. He would have embarrassed me. He would have considered that his duty. We laughed. That afternoon, someone took a photograph of us near the water. My mother stood beside me, with one hand on my shoulder. Not steering. Not directing. Simply resting there. When I saw the photograph later, I realized it was the first image of us together since I entered the academy. Years of separation had existed between one photograph and the next. The financial case against Celeste continued. I will not pretend the outcome gave me satisfaction. Legal accountability is slower and less cinematic than people imagine. There were interviews, records requests, negotiations, and hearings. There were arguments over which expenses benefited the household and which were clearly personal. Celeste eventually admitted misusing the account and the power of attorney. She was required to surrender financial control, repay what could be traced, and comply with court-ordered restrictions. She continued, insisting that she had been under impossible pressure. Perhaps she had been. Pressure explains why a person searches for an exit. It does not explain why she locks two other people inside the burning room. The hardest part was accepting that Celeste probably loved us. Not healthily, not safely, but in the only way she understood love, through control, indispensability, and fear of replacement. She needed my mother dependent. She needed me distant. She needed Jonah to see her as the person holding everyone together. Each time the family moved toward independence, she created a crisis that restored her position at the center. The wedding was simply the largest crisis she had ever designed. Once I understood that, many old memories changed shape. The emergency calls that ended whenever I offered to visit. The illnesses that became worse when my mother mentioned traveling. The financial problems that required money, but never documentation. The way Celeste praised me publicly, while privately telling our mother I was ashamed of the family. She did not invent a new pattern for the wedding. She escalated the one that had already worked for years. People often ask why I did not notice. The answer is not satisfying. I trusted my sister because mistrusting her would have required accepting something I was not ready to believe. I understood strangers could manipulate records. I understood institutions needed oversight. I understood every operational system required independent verification. But family occupied a protected category in my mind. I believed shared history created shared loyalty. It does not. History gives people knowledge of where you are vulnerable. Character determines what they do with that knowledge. My mother and I are still rebuilding. She has apologized more than once, but the apology that mattered most came almost a year after the wedding. We were sitting in a diner outside Bellwether. She stirred her coffee for so long that the spoon made a faint, repetitive sound against the cup. Then she said, "I have been telling myself Celeste made me hit you." I waited. She brought me there. She lied. She fed every wound I had, but she did not move my hand. No. I moved it. Yes. I need you to know I understand that. I looked at her. I do. She pressed her lips together. I cannot promise I will never believe another lie. I can promise I will ask you before I act on one. That is all I need. She reached across the table. I placed my hand in hers. Not because everything was repaired. Because the repair was honest. Our family did not return to what it had been. That family had depended on silence, assumptions, and one person controlling the flow of truth. We built something smaller. My mother calls me directly. I verify financial decisions with her and her attorney. Jonah visits without being questioned about his mother or asked to carry messages. Noah and I protect our marriage from the obligation to rescue everyone. And Celeste remains outside the boundary she violated. Maybe one day she will become someone we can speak to safely. Maybe she will not. Forgiveness and access are not the same thing. Love does not require an unlocked door. Sometimes love looks like a boundary strong enough to stop the same harm from entering twice. The blood-stained wedding dress hangs in a garment bag in our closet. I considered having the marks professionally removed. Instead, I left them. They are faint now. Most people would never notice. I know where they are. They remind me that a visible wound can distract everyone from an invisible crime. They remind me that the loudest moment in a family is not always the most important one. The slap lasted less than a second. The system behind it took 7 years to build. It was built from intercepted letters, altered messages, redirected money, controlled access, borrowed grief, and the belief that asking direct questions would be cruel. That belief nearly cost us everything. So here is what I learned. When someone insists that every relationship must pass through them, that is not care. When someone repeatedly tells you another person is too fragile to speak for themselves, verify it. When every piece of information comes from one source, find another source. When money is being handled in the name of someone you love, read the documents. And when a family member tells you that asking questions will destroy the family, understand that the questions may only destroy the version of the family that protects them. Truth did not give my mother and me back the years we lost. It gave us the years still ahead. Last week, she called while Noah and I were cooking dinner. She had found an old photograph of Uncle Owen standing beside a rescue helicopter, laughing with both arms raised against the wind. "I used to look at this and see the day he died," she said. "What do you see now?" She was quiet. The life he chose before that day. Then she asked me to tell her about my next assignment. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. Before we ended the call, she said, "Stand tall, Mara." The words belonged to Owen once. Then they belonged to my mother. Now they belong to me. And maybe that is what healing really is. Not forgetting the sentence that hurt you. Giving it a different ending. Share this story with someone who may be living behind another person's version of the truth. Tell me in the comments what part stayed with you. Subscribe to After Silence Stories for more stories of betrayal, hidden truths, and women reclaiming their lives. And I'll meet you in the next episode.